The sun was setting behind the red hills when Farmer Jacob drove his old hover cart into the town market. His cart rattled, the wheels shaking like they were about to fall off. Everyone in town knew that sound. It meant Jacob, the lonely farmer, was back again. He was tall, quiet, and always kept to himself. Some said he talked more to his cows than to people. Others said he never smiled since his wife died 3 years ago. But today, Jacob wasn't alone. Beside him sat a strange figure, small, thin, and covered in a ragged brown cloak. The smell reached people before they even saw her. A sharp, rotten scent spread through the air. Old Mrs. Clan covered her nose and shouted, "Good heavens, Jacob, what is that thing?" The crowd turned. Children laughed. Men made jokes. Someone whispered, "He's finally gone crazy." Jacob climbed down from his cart and looked at them, calm but tired. "She's not a thing," he said. "She's a girl." The figure moved. The brown cloak slipped a little and everyone saw her face. Gray skin, too many scars, small dark eyes that seemed to glow faintly blue. Her hair was tangled like seaweed and her hands were shaking. People stepped back. Someone spat on the ground. "An alien?" a man shouted. "You brought one of them here?" Jacob nodded slowly. "Bought her from a trader up north," he said. "She was locked in a cage. I couldn't just leave her there." Laughter burst out again. The butcher leaned on his counter and said, "You paid for that ugly thing." "What will you do, Jacob, and make her milk the cows?" The others laughed louder. Some threw small bits of trash toward the cart. The alien girl stayed still, her eyes darting around, frightened. Jacob's voice was low but firm. "You all forget too easy. We came from another planet once. Maybe someone called us ugly back then too." For a moment the laughter faded, but it returned soon enough, sharper than before. As Jacob led the cart away, people kept laughing behind him. The sound echoed down the road like cruel music. His farm was 10 miles out of town, quiet and half forgotten. The fences were broken, and the fields were dry from the long summer. He stopped in front of the old barn and helped the girl climb down. She was weak, her steps unsteady. When Jacob tried to help, she flinched away like a scared animal. "It's all right," he said gently. "You're safe here." She didn't answer. Only her large, blue-glowing eyes looked at him for a second, then quickly turned away. Jacob opened the small cabin door. "You can stay in here," he said. "It ain't much, but it's warm." The girl walked inside without a word. The smell of dust and oil filled the air. Jacob gave her a blanket, some bread, and a jug of water. She didn't touch any of it. That night, Jacob sat outside on his porch looking at the stars. The crickets sang in the dry grass. He could still hear the laughter from the market in his mind. "Fools," he muttered to himself. "They laugh because they don't understand." He looked at the small cabin where the alien girl was staying. Through the window a faint blue glow pulsed, soft like the light of a dying candle. Jacob frowned. Maybe it was just the lantern. But then he realized he hadn't given her one. He stood up and walked closer. The ground felt strange under his boots, warm like something alive was moving beneath the soil. He reached the door and knocked softly. "You all right in there?" he asked. No answer. He pushed the door open. The air inside was colder than outside. The girl sat on the floor, her hands folded together, her eyes closed. Around her, strange symbols glowed on the wooden walls, thin, curved lines that shimmered like fireflies. Jacob froze. "What in heaven's name?" Her eyes opened. The blue light in them brightened, filling the room. For a moment, Jacob couldn't breathe. Then, just as suddenly, the light vanished. The room was dark again. The girl looked at him, frightened, and whispered her first words. "Don't be scared," she said softly, her voice shaking. "It only happens when I dream." Jacob stared at her. "When you dream?" She nodded slowly. "I can't stop it." He didn't understand, but he could see her trembling. So he just sighed and said, "All right, girl, rest easy. No one will hurt you here." She blinked, then looked down at her hands, small, scarred, and glowing faintly again. Jacob walked back to his porch, trying to calm his heart. The night was quiet now, but the ground under his feet still felt warm. He sat down and stared at the sky again. A shooting star crossed above, leaving a thin blue trail behind it. He thought of his wife, of all the years alone, and of the laughter of the people who called him crazy. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was crazy, but somewhere deep inside a strange feeling began to grow, not fear, not regret. Something else. Hope. And and far across the fields from the girl's small cabin, the blue light flickered again, stronger this time, as if answering his heart. The next morning, the farm was wrapped in a strange calm. The air smelled of rain, though the sky was clear. Jacob woke early, as always, but something felt different. The birds were singing louder. The soil, usually dry and cracked, looked soft and dark, like it had been watered during the night. He rubbed his eyes. "That's strange," he whispered. "No rain last night." When he walked toward the barn, he stopped. The broken tractor that hadn't worked for months was standing straight, clean of rust. Its engine looked fixed. Jacob frowned and looked toward the cabin. A small figure was already outside, the alien girl. She moved slowly, her bare feet sinking into the earth. Her gray skin shimmered faintly under the morning light. She bent down and touched the ground. Wherever her fingers brushed, tiny green sprouts appeared, fresh life pushing through the dirt. Jacob stood there, unable to speak. Finally, he said quietly, "So, you are special." She turned her head slightly, her strange blue eyes meeting his for just a moment. Then she looked down again, silent. Jacob sighed. "You don't talk much, do you?" No answer. Only a small tilt of her head. He tried again. "Do you even understand me?" She blinked slowly, then nodded, just once. Jacob smiled faintly. "All right then. I'll take that as a yes." He gave her some breakfast and bread and milk, but she only stared at it. Instead, she walked to the old water trough and dipped her hand in. The water began to glow faintly, then turned perfectly clear like glass. Jacob touched it with his finger. It was cool and fresh, cleaner than any water he'd ever tasted. He looked at her again. "What are you doing to my farm, girl?" She didn't reply. She only raised her head toward the sky, her eyes glowing again for a second, as if listening to something far away. Days passed. Leary, that was the name Jacob finally gave her, stayed quiet, but worked without being asked. She cleaned the barn, fed the animals, and touched the plants with her glowing hands. Wherever she went, life followed. Jacob's farm began to change. The crops grew twice as fast. The dry cornfields turned gold and full. Even the old apple trees that hadn't bloomed in years were suddenly covered in white flowers. People from town started talking again. "Jacob's farm is shining like it's blessed," they said. "Must be that alien witch he brought home," others whispered. "Maybe she's cursed the land to control him." Jacob ignored them, but he could feel their eyes on him when he went into town for supplies. The laughter was gone now and replaced by fear. One evening, Jacob returned from town and found Leary standing near the barn. The setting sun painted her face in gold light, but she didn't look at him. She was drawing something on the wooden wall, glowing shapes that twisted and moved like fireflies. He stepped closer. "What's that you're doing?" Still silent, she finished the last symbol, then stepped back. The marks pulsed once, then dimmed into faint blue light. Jacob touched one of them. It was warm, almost alive. "Is this your language?" he asked. Leary nodded. Then, after a long pause, she whispered softly, "Home." Jacob's heart tightened. It was the first word she had spoken since that night. "Home?" he repeated. "You mean, you're home?" She nodded again, slower this time. Then a single tear rolled down her gray cheek. Jacob wanted to comfort her, but he didn't know how. So he just said gently, "You can make this your home too, if you want." She looked up at him, and for a moment, her lips curved into something almost like a smile. That night, strange things began again. Jacob couldn't sleep. He heard a soft humming from outside, not from any machine, but from the air itself. He stepped out onto the porch. The fields were glowing faintly blue, the light spreading across the land like ripples on water. In the middle of it stood Leary, her arms raised, eyes closed. Her body shimmered as if made of starlight. Jacob called out, "Leary, what's happening?" She didn't move. The ground under her feet began to pulse, and the crops bent toward her as if bowing. The entire field looked alive. Jacob ran toward her, shouting her name again. When he reached her, the light suddenly vanished. Leary fell to her knees, breathing hard. He caught her before she hit the ground. "What are you doing to yourself?" he asked, voice trembling. She looked weak, her eyes dim. "I feed the land," she whispered. "It was dying. I made it live." Jacob held her gently. "You don't have to do that. You'll hurt yourself." Her lips moved in a tired smile. "You helped me. I help you. Jacob didn't know what to say. He just looked at her, this strange creature the world called ugly, and felt something heavy shift in his heart. Maybe beauty wasn't always in how someone looked. Maybe it was in what they gave even when they had nothing. He carried her back to the cabin and laid her on the bed. She was already asleep, breathing softly, her hands still faintly glowing. Jacob sat by the door for a long time, listening to the wind outside. The fields were still shining faintly, like the stars had come down to rest on his land. He whispered to himself, "They all laughed at me for bringing you home. But I think you're the best thing that's ever happened here." 3 weeks passed. The farm was alive like never before. Everywhere Jacob looked, green life stretched across the hills. Birds sang from the fences, the cows were healthy, and the air smelled sweet after rain. But peace never lasts long. It started one quiet morning when Jacob noticed shadows moving across the fields. At first, he thought they were clouds, but the sky was clear. When he looked up, his heart froze. There were ships. 3 silver shapes hovered high above the valley, silent and cold, their undersides glowing with blue light. They weren't trader ships or farm haulers. These were patrol craft, military. Jacob dropped his tools and ran to the cabin. "Leary," he called.
"Stay inside!"
The girl stepped out slowly, her face pale. She looked up at the ships and whispered, "They found me." Jacob stared at her. "Who? What are you talking about?" Her eyes glowed faintly, the same color as the ships in the sky. "Humans," she said softly. "They're looking for me." That day the quiet valley changed. The town sent out scouts. Drones floated over farms. Military jeeps rumbled along the dirt roads. People whispered Jacob's name again, but not with laughter this time, with fear. One man came to the farm and shouted from the fence, "Jacob, you better tell them what you got here. They're saying there's a creature hiding out in these parts." Jacob just shook his head. "There's no creature here. Only me." The man squinted at him, suspicious. "You're a fool if you're protecting one of them. They said those aliens can twist the land, poison the air. You'll get yourself killed." Jacob turned away. "Then I'll die honest." That night, Leary sat by the window staring at the sky. The silver ship still hung there, distant and patient like hunters. Jacob sat beside her. "Why are they after you?" he asked quietly. For a long time she said nothing. Then in a trembling voice she began to speak. "They took my people," she said. "Humans came to our planet, said they wanted peace. But they lied. They took us to their labs, said they wanted to study us. They wanted our gift and the power to make life grow." Her eyes dimmed as she spoke. "They call it energy, but for us it is soul. It comes from the heart. When they tried to take it, many of us died. I escaped." Jacob's chest tightened. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You mean they tortured your kind? For power?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, they don't understand. If they take too much, it kills everything. Even planets." Jacob looked down at his calloused hands. He felt shame. Not for what he had done, but for what his people had. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't know." Leary looked at him, her blue eyes shimmering like tears. "You are different, Jacob. You saved me. That is why I stayed." Days passed again, heavy with silence. Jacob worked the fields, pretending everything was normal, but the hum of engines filled the air every morning. The ships never left. They were watching. Then one evening, Jacob noticed a red light flashing by the barn. It was small, blinking fast, a drone the size of a crow. He ran toward it, but before he could reach, it scanned him with a thin red beam. Then it turned toward the cabin. "No," Jacob shouted. He grabbed a shovel and swung hard, smashing the machine. Sparks flew as it fell to the dirt. Leary ran out, panic in her eyes. "They saw me," she whispered. "The drones always see." Jacob's heart pounded. "We'll hide you," he said quickly. "The cellar. They won't find you there." He pulled open the trapdoor beneath the barn. It was dark and smelled of earth and oil. "Stay here," he said. "I'll make them think you're gone." Leary looked terrified, but she nodded. Before climbing down, she pressed her small hand against his chest. "You are kind," she said softly. "But they will hurt you." Jacob shook his head. "Let them try." An hour later, the soldiers came. They wore gray armor and masks, carrying rifles that hummed faintly. The lead one held a scanner glowing red. "We're tracking alien energy," he said. "You've been off the grid, farmer. Seen anything strange?" Jacob met his stare. "Only strange thing I see is you scaring my cows." The soldier frowned. "This isn't a joke. An escaped subject from Project Origin is hiding nearby. Dangerous. Tell us if you've seen anything unusual. Jacob lied without blinking. Nothing here but corn and dust. They scanned the barn, the fields, even his house. The machine beeped once near the cellar, then stopped. The soldier stared at the ground for a moment, then looked back at Jacob. If you're hiding something, we'll find out, he said coldly. They left soon after, engines roaring into the distance. Jacob waited until the sound faded, then lifted the trapdoor. Leary climbed out, shaking. They know, she whispered. They'll come again. Jacob nodded. His voice was calm but hard. Then we'll be ready. That night he sat by the window with his old rifle across his knees. Outside, lightning flashed far beyond the hills, but there was no storm. The ships were moving closer now, and one beam of light began to sweep across his field, searching. Jacob whispered to himself, "Let them come. She's not alone anymore." In the cellar, Leary closed her eyes and whispered something in her strange language. The earth around the house trembled softly, like it was breathing. Above the clouds, the hunters turned their lights toward the farm. The next morning came too quiet. No birds sang. No wind moved through the fields. Even the air felt heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. Jacob stepped outside with his rifle, eyes scanning the horizon. The silver ships were gone, but he knew that didn't mean safety. When hunters disappear, it only means they've found their trail. Inside the cabin, Leary sat by the small table, holding one of Jacob's old books. She couldn't read the words, but she traced her fingers over the pictures, plants, stars, and faraway lands. Her eyes looked sad, as if she missed something she could never return to. Jacob placed a hand on her shoulder. "We may have to leave soon," he said quietly. "They know you're here. It's only a matter of time before they come back." She turned to him slowly. "You could leave me," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were wet. "They won't hurt you if you tell them where I am." Jacob frowned. "And what kind of man would that make me?" "A living one," she whispered. Later that day, they heard the engines again, faint at first, then louder, shaking the ground. Leary grabbed his arm. "Please," she said, voice trembling. "Hide me." But it was too late. A convoy of armored vehicles rolled down the dirt road, dust rising behind them like a storm. Soldiers poured out and spread across the fields, guns ready. Jacob and Leary stood on the porch as the lead officer approached. He was tall, clean, and cold, his helmet shining under the sunlight. The black letters on his chest read, "Commander Hale." "Farmer Jacob," the man said through his speaker. "We need to search your property again. Alien energy has been detected in this area." Jacob crossed his arms. "You already searched." "Found nothing." Hale smiled thinly. "Yes, but readings spiked again last night. I think you're hiding something." Behind him, soldiers moved toward the barn. Leary froze, fear flashing across her face. Jacob noticed and stepped in front of her. "You can't go in there," he said. Hale's voice sharpened. "Step aside, farmer." Jacob's hands tightened into fists. "Not until you tell me what you really want." Hale's expression hardened. "We're hunting a fugitive. Dangerous, inhuman. We'll do whatever it takes to keep people safe." Leary whispered behind Jacob. "He lies." The commander's head tilted. "What was that?" Jacob swallowed hard. "She said, nothing." Hale raised his scanner. It beeped rapidly, flashing red. The soldiers lifted their guns. "There," Hale said. "Behind you." Jacob turned slightly, enough to block Leary with his body. "She's not dangerous," he shouted. The soldiers aimed their rifles. Leary trembled, clutching Jacob's arm. The world seemed to stop. "Move aside, Jacob," Hale ordered. "You don't understand what you're protecting." Jacob's voice broke, but he didn't move. "I understand enough. She's alive. She's scared. And she's done more good for this land than any of your machines ever could." For a moment, no one spoke. The air hummed with tension. Then Hale gave a small nod. "Take them both." Chaos exploded. Jacob swung his rifle like a club, knocking one soldier down. Another fired. The bullet hit the porch post, splintering wood. Leary screamed, and a burst of blue light flashed from her hands. The shockwave threw the soldiers backward. The ground cracked and the air filled with glowing dust. The fields began to move, vines rising from the soil like living ropes wrapping around metal and guns. Hale staggered back, shouting orders. "Contain her." "Don't let her use the energy." Leary's eyes blazed bright blue. "Stop," she cried. Her voice echoed across the valley. "I don't want to hurt you." But the soldiers kept firing. Jacob threw himself in front of her, shielding her from the shots. One bullet grazed his shoulder, another tore through his hat. He shouted through the pain, "Run, Leary!" "Go." Tears streamed down her face. "No, I won't leave you." She lifted both hands and a wave of light erupted across the land. The soldiers' weapons melted into dust. The engines of their vehicles sparked and died. The sky turned pale blue like dawn at midnight. When the light faded, everyone was on the ground. Smoke curled from the machines. Only Jacob and Leary stood in the silence. Jacob turned to her, breathing hard. "You didn't have to." "I didn't want to," she said softly. "But they would have killed you." She knelt beside a soldier who was still conscious, his helmet cracked. She touched his chest and the blue glow passed from her hand into his body. His breathing steadied. Jacob watched, speechless. She wasn't a weapon, she was something far greater. Leary looked up at him, exhausted. "Now they'll send more," she said. "Stronger ones," Jacob nodded. "Then we'll be ready next time." She shook her head. "You don't understand. If they find me again, they'll take me back. And they'll take you too." He stepped closer and gently lifted her chin. "Then I'll go wherever you go." Her eyes widened. "Why?" "Because," he said, smiling faintly through the dirt and blood, "someone has to show them what real humans look like." Leary's lips trembled, and for the first time she smiled fully, glowing with warmth and sorrow. Above them, thunder rolled. The ships were returning. The ground trembled again. Jacob gripped his rifle tighter, staring at the sky. "It's all right," he said quietly. "They want to fight? They'll find a farmer who doesn't run." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and ozone. The first drops fell onto the glowing earth, and as lightning flashed over the hills, the two of them stood together, a human and an alien, ready to face whatever came next. The rain didn't last long. By morning, black smoke curled over the valley. Jacob saw it first, a column rising beyond the hills where the town stood. The smell followed soon after, sharp and bitter like burning metal and sorrow. He stood on the porch, his rifle resting in his hands, staring toward the horizon. "They've started," he whispered. Behind him, Leary stepped out, her gray skin faintly glowing in the dim light. "They're burning everything," she said softly. "They think I did this." Jacob turned to her. "They don't think, Leary, they fear. That's worse." Hours later, the sky was filled with the hum of engines. More ships, black ones this time, shaped like blades, drifted down over the farmland. Their lights swept across the ground, searching. Jacob could see soldiers moving through the smoke, setting fire to anything green. They were burning the crops, the trees, even the soil. The earth screamed with every burst of flame. Leary grabbed Jacob's arm. "We must go." He shook his head. "No, if we run, they'll chase us forever. This is our home now." Her voice cracked. "They will kill you." "Then I'll die standing," Jacob said. He walked into the barn, pulling out the old generator cables, the fuel canisters, and his father's long-forgotten shotgun. His hands shook as he worked. He had never been a fighter, only a farmer. But sometimes even the soil fights back. By noon, the town itself was in chaos. Smoke rolled down the valley like dark fog. People ran through the streets, shouting, coughing. Soldiers dragged anyone who resisted into the trucks. They said an alien cursed the land. One man cried. "They said she's bringing the end." Another yelled. Fear had eaten the hearts of everyone. When the soldiers reached Jacob's farm, they didn't knock this time. Explosions tore through the fence and the ground shook. The front door blew open, scattering splinters. Jacob fired once, twice, not to kill, just to slow them down. "Get back!" he shouted. Leary stood behind him, trembling. "Stop, please stop!" she cried out. Her voice rang through the air like a bell, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to pause. Then the first bullet struck Jacob's shoulder. He fell to one knee, clutching the wound. Leary screamed. A blinding wave of blue light burst from her body. The ground split open. Roots shot upward like living whips, wrapping around metal and armor. The soldiers struggled, shouting, but the vines dragged them down. Jacob crawled toward her. "Leary, stop! You'll destroy everything!" Tears streamed down her face. "They won't stop, Jacob. They'll never stop." Her eyes glowed brighter, the light spilling across the fields. Every plant came alive. Corn stalks twisted into walls. Grass turned sharp like blades. The earth itself moved, roaring like thunder. Jacob grabbed her hand, shouting over the chaos. Listen to me. You're not like them. Don't become what they fear. Her breath came in short gasps. I don't want to hurt them. I only wanted peace, and then show them, Jacob said. Show them who you are. Slowly, her hands lowered. The glow softened. The screaming earth began to quiet. The vines loosened, setting the soldiers free. They fell to the ground, stunned but alive. Leary fell too, her body weak and trembling. Jacob caught her before she hit the ground. You did good, he whispered, holding her close. You stopped it. But before he could say more, a new sound filled the air. A deep metallic hum. The largest ship yet descended through the clouds, its engine shaking the ground. A voice boomed from its speakers. Target located. Authorized to neutralize. A beam of red light cut through the sky, striking the barn. The explosion was blinding. Fire spread across the farm, turning the golden fields into a sea of flames. Jacob threw himself over Leary, shielding her. Heat scorched his back. The smell of burning earth filled his lungs. He could barely breathe. Leary, run. But she shook her head weakly. I can't leave you. She lifted her trembling hands and pressed them against his chest. You helped me live, she whispered. Now I help you. Before Jacob could stop her, her body began to shine, brighter than before, pure blue and white. The flames around them froze mid-air, then vanished into sparks. The ground cooled and the air grew calm. Jacob blinked, gasping for breath. His wounds were gone. His body felt strange, stronger, lighter. He looked at her in horror. What did you do? Her voice was fading. I gave you part of me. No. You can't, she smiled softly. Now you'll live. Even if I don't. Her light dimmed and she collapsed in his arms. The ships above circled, scanning. But where the farm had been, only ash and silence remained. The soldiers looked on from a distance, whispering. Jacob held Leary close, her small hand limp in his. The blue glow still pulsed faintly under her skin, like a heartbeat refusing to stop. He looked up at the sky, at the ships that destroyed his home, and something inside him hardened. You wanted a monster, he whispered. Now you've made one. Lightning flashed behind him. The last of the fire died away, replaced by soft blue light spreading from the soil outward. The mark of her power. The soldier stepped back in fear as the earth began to hum again. Jacob stood slowly, Leary still in his arms, his eyes glowing faintly blue. The wind carried his voice across the burning fields, quiet, steady and full of rage. She's not your enemy, he said, but I might be. And as the black ships turned their lights toward him, the first seeds of a new storm began to rise. The world was silent after the fire. No birds, no wind. Only the faint hum of something alive deep beneath the soil. Jacob opened his eyes slowly. The air around him shimmered faintly blue, like dawn after a storm. The fields that once burned were now covered in soft glowing grass. The barn was gone, the farmhouse was gone, but somehow he was alive. He sat up, dazed, his body aching. His clothes were torn, his hands covered in ash. Then he looked down and froze. Leary lay in his arms, still and quiet, her face pale as moonlight. But her chest still pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat too gentle to hear. Leary, he whispered. Don't leave me now. Her eyelids fluttered and a whisper escaped her lips. Jacob, you're... Changed, he frowned. Changed? What do you mean? She reached up weakly and touched his face. Your eyes, she said softly. They shine like mine. Jacob blinked and for the first time saw the faint blue light reflecting from his own hands. His skin glowed faintly under the rising sun. He could feel something moving inside him, warm, alive, powerful. What did you do to me? He asked. Leary smiled faintly. I gave you my light, part of me, so you could live. He shook his head. You shouldn't have. You need it more than I do. Her eyes softened. You always say that. For 2 days, Jacob carried her deeper into the forest, away from the soldiers and the ashes of his farm. They found an old hunter's shelter, broken walls, a half-rotten roof, but enough to hide them. Leary was weak, barely speaking, but every night she glowed faintly, keeping the cold away. Jacob hunted small animals, gathered water from streams, and watched the sky for ships. He could feel her power inside him now. When he touched a dead branch, it grew leaves again. When he whispered to the soil, flowers bloomed. It frightened him, but it also felt natural, like the earth was listening to him for the first time. One night, as he sat beside her, She opened her eyes. "You can feel it, can't you?" she asked. Jacob nodded. "I can. Everything's alive. I can feel the heartbeat of the land." "That's what my people called the breath of worlds," she said softly. "It connects life to life." He looked at her with wonder. "Is this what they tried to steal from you?" She nodded. "Humans wanted it. They thought it was power. But it's not power. It's balance. It gives only to those who protect." Jacob clenched his fists. "They'll come again. They'll try to take it from you, and from me, from this planet." Leary looked into his glowing eyes. "Then you must protect it," he hesitated. "I'm just a farmer," she smiled weakly. "Not anymore." The next morning, Jacob tested his gift. He walked through the dead forest, touching the trees. Wherever his hands brushed, green spread like fire. The sound of leaves returned. Birds sang again. The air smelled fresh, clean, new. But as beauty returned, so did fear. A group of humans from the nearby town saw the glowing forest and followed the light. They stopped at a distance, staring. "It's him," one whispered. "The alien's man." "He's not human anymore," said another. Jacob stepped forward. "You don't have to be afraid, but fear always listens louder than reason." The men raised their rifles. Before Jacob could speak again, the ground shook, and roots rose between them like walls, separating them. He hadn't meant to do it. It just happened. He sighed and lowered his hands. The vines retreated slowly back into the earth. When he looked up again, the men were gone. He whispered to himself, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not human anymore." That night, Leary grew weaker. Her glow flickered like a dying flame. Jacob sat beside her, holding her hand. "Don't you go fading on me," he said softly. "You promised you'd see the world bloom again." Her voice was faint, barely a breath. "I've done my part, Jacob. You have my light now. You can finish what I started." He shook his head. "No, not without you." She smiled faintly, her eyes full of sadness and love. "You already carry me with you." Jacob leaned closer. "Why me, Leary? Why give your gift to someone like me?" Her eyes met his. "Because you never saw a monster. You saw a person." Tears filled his eyes. "You're not just a person, you're everything good this world forgot." Leary's lips curved into a soft smile. "Then promise me one thing. When they come for you and when they see your power, don't fight with hate. Fight with hope." He held her close. "I promise." By morning, the forest was silent again. Leary was gone, her body no longer flesh and bone, but light. It drifted upward, turning into glowing dust that sank into the soil. Jacob fell to his knees, tears running down his face. The earth beneath him pulsed softly, as if breathing with her spirit. He looked at his hands, still glowing, and whispered, "You're still here." Then he stood, facing the horizon where the ships waited in the distance. The sky shimmered with their metallic glare. Jacob's eyes blazed blue as the wind began to rise. The ground beneath his feet responded to his heartbeat. He was no longer just a farmer. He was something else, something born from both worlds. And as he walked toward the coming storm, the forest followed him, trees bending, flowers blooming, the earth alive with his steps. The new man had risen. Dawn broke over a world reborn and afraid. The sky glowed silver, streaked with thin clouds, and the air hummed like it carried a secret. In the heart of the glowing forest, Jacob stood alone. He had buried his rifle days ago. He no longer needed it. When he breathed, the wind stirred. When he touched the soil, flowers bloomed. The gift Leary left within him had grown, deeper, stronger, almost alive on its own. But so had the danger. Above him, the ships hung like scars in the sky, black, sharp, endless. The same voices that had once laughed at the farmer were now whispering in fear of him. They called him a traitor, a monster, a warning. Jacob didn't care. He had one promise left to keep, to fight with hope. The soldiers came again, hundreds this time, wearing dark armor that glinted under the sun. Their boots crushed the soil that had only just healed. Commander Hale stepped forward, scarred and angry. "You've gone too far, farmer," he said coldly. "You think you can save an alien world? You can't even save your own." Jacob didn't move. His voice was calm. "I'm not saving a world. I'm healing one." Hale raised his weapon. "You're infected with alien matter. We have orders to neutralize you." Jacob's eyes glowed faintly. "I'm infected with mercy. Maybe that's what your world needs." The commander hesitated for just a second, but it was enough. The ground beneath the soldiers shifted. Roots and vines rose, not to attack, but to hold them still. The weapons sparked and fell silent. Jacob walked forward slowly, his voice soft but echoing. I don't want to fight you. I want you to see what she gave me, what she gave us. He opened his hands and light spread across the valley, blue and warm, like the glow of distant stars. The fire-scarred ground turned green again, the air filled with the scent of life, sweet and clean. The soldiers stared, speechless. Even Hale lowered his gun. What is this? He whispered. Her gift, Jacob said. Leary's heart. Then the sky split open. Dozens of alien ships appeared, but these were not the hunters. They were smooth and golden, shaped like petals floating through the clouds. Their lights pulsed in rhythm with the heartbeat of the earth. Jacob felt it before he saw it. The presence of something familiar, something gentle. A voice filled the air, soft as a song. Jacob of Earth, you carry one of our lights. He looked up, tears in his eyes. Leary, the voice answered, warm and kind. Her essence lives within you. Through her we found you. From the golden ships descended figures of light. Tall, graceful, their eyes glowing blue like Leary's. They touched the earth softly, and wherever they stepped, flowers bloomed. The humans fell silent, their anger swallowed by awe. Commander Hale stared, lost for words. What are they? Jacob looked at him. Her people, the ones your kind tried to destroy. The aliens bowed their heads toward Jacob. You kept her promise. You let life return. He nodded slowly. She saved me. I just did what she taught me. But peace never comes without a test. From the sky, the black ships moved again, the military's final fleet massive and cold. They charged their weapons, red beams forming at their cores. Jacob raised his hands, shouting, Don't do this! You'll destroy everything! No one listened. The first beam fired, a streak of death cutting through the clouds. Before it hit, a brilliant wave of blue light erupted from the golden ships. The beam vanished into nothing. The air rippled, silent and still. The aliens' leader looked at Jacob. They fear what they cannot feel. Only love can stop their war. Jacob's chest burned, the deep, powerful ache. He felt her again inside him, whispering, Now, Jacob, let me go. He fell to his knees, clutching his chest. The light inside him grew brighter, rising like a second sun. No, he whispered. You can't leave me again, her voice echoed softly. I never left. But this world needs more than us. It needs balance. Jacob looked at the sky. Then take it. Take everything. Just make it right. He spread his arms and the light burst outward, flowing into the earth, the sky, the stars. The ships froze mid-air, wrapped in a wave of color. The soldiers dropped their weapons as the wind turned warm and sweet. From every seed, flower, and leaf, new life grew. Faster, brighter, unstoppable. The ground itself bloomed. Rivers cleared. Air shimmered. Leary's voice whispered one last time, fading into the breeze. You kept your promise, my farmer. When the light faded, the war was gone. The ships lay silent, half buried in wildflowers. The air was alive with birdsong again. The soldiers stood in awe, surrounded by beauty they couldn't destroy. Commander Hale fell to his knees, his face wet with tears. And in the center of it all stood Jacob, his glow now gentle, his body human once more. In his hand he held a single seed shining faintly blue. He knelt and pressed it into the soil. Rest now, he whispered. Your work is done. From that spot a new tree began to grow, tall, silver-leaved, and bright. Years passed. The world healed. Humans and aliens rebuilt together. Children played under that great silver tree, laughing and running through green fields. In the town square stood a statue, a farmer and an alien girl holding hands. Their faces turned toward the sky, and beneath the statue were the words Jacob had carved himself before he vanished into the forest one final time. They laughed when I brought her home. But they stopped laughing when her love saved the world. The wind carried his voice like a memory, gentle and proud. And somewhere in the stars, two lights, one blue, one gold, drifted side by side, watching a world that had finally learned to bloom.